Hi, I'm Doug Lynch, a senior scientist here at LI-COR, and in this video we are going to show you how to access the pump of your LI-600, either for servicing or replacement. So a replacement pump can be ordered from us, and the kit will simply include the pump, which looks like this. Tools you will need to access this area are a Phillips screwdriver, and it's helpful to have a pair of tweezers and just a little container to hold the screws as you remove them. Okay, so the first step in accessing the area where the pump is removing the two shells, which has a few Phillips screws on the sides that I've already removed. And that shell will come off, and same on the other side. There are a few screws that I've already removed, and the shell will just slide off like this. And now we have access to all the components on the inside. Now the pump that we're going to be discussing today is located inside this housing, which requires a few more screws to remove. So we'll do that kind of in real time here. So I'll point out that the Phillips screws are intended for things that users need to access. And if you see a hex screw, then you should think carefully before removing that. Those are really only intended for LI-COR technicians or distributors. So you want to kind of loosen these four screws before removing them. It's best to go around and give them all a loosen before taking them out completely. And then once they're all loose, the screws can be removed. And so the air inlet, while I'm removing the screws, I'll explain what things are. The air inlet is located right here. And so right behind it will be the components we need to access. So there's four Phillips head screws, and then this part will just come off. And you'll see right beneath it now is where we capture our filter. So it could be that you just need to either clean or replace this filter, which can be carefully tweezed out like so, in which case this is as far as you would need to go. So if you have a flow restriction, this is the first thing to check. Make sure your filter is clear of any debris. It also can be replaced from a part in your spare parts kit. And if that looks fine and you need to investigate further into your pump, it's four more screws on this part here in the corners. And so, again, the same tool, same Phillips screws, and those four screws will come out. And you do want to be careful not to nick the wires here that go to the match valve. They're pretty far out of the way, but just be careful not to impinge upon those. And now these four screws, sometimes it's helpful to use tweezers to reach them. Oop, didn't quite loosen that one. There it comes. And now the next component, this will just lift up, and it can be moved out of the way. And right beneath that is the pump. So we do anticipate these will last many years in the field, but it is a moving part and is subject to failure. And you can see if it does fail and need to be replaced, it's not attached in any way or screwed in any way. It's just compressed between this part and the part above it. And so there's no further screws to remove the pump. It can just be pulled out. And to point out the orientation of the pump, so you can see this side, there's a sort of a white circular element, and that's the side facing up. And if I flip it over, these are the electrical contacts here and here. And so they make contact with these pins right here. And so that tells you how to orient it. Those two plates need to be facing down, as well as the pump outlet, which is this small plastic nozzle in the middle. That needs to be facing down towards the flow path, and that that white circle faces up towards the user. So that's removing the pump is as simple as that. And then you would just put in your replacement pump. One other reason to access this area is to check the zero of your RH sensors if you're going to be using the scrub tube provided in the instrument. Our water buffering material is located right here. It's these small beads that are located underneath the pump. And if you try to zero your RH sensors with these beads in place, it will take a very, very long time to reach zero, if ever. These really do a great job of buffering water, and it's not recommended to check your zero with these beads in place. And so you would need to remove those beads and store them somewhere separately. And then you can just put your pump back in place and put it all back together, which we'll show here in a minute. And then the manual will have more information on this. You can thread a 1032 fitting to get to a scrub tube in here and run dry air through your system. There is an alternative method to check the zero of your RH sensors that does not require all of this disassembly, but it does require either an external pump or a tank with pressure to flow the air across the sensors. And more information on that can be found in the manual or on our website. But if this operation were to replace a damaged pump, you would discard the old pump and your new pump, being careful with the orientation. Again, you want this white circle to face up and the black nozzle and the two electrical contacts to face down. And you would put it in place, and keeping in mind there's nothing to capture it yet. So you have to be a little bit careful about making sure it's oriented right. There are pins in this component for two of the corners. There are two pins machined in here which need to align with the holes here and here in the pump. So those help you making sure you're lined up properly. So once you have it lined up properly, this part with the filter goes on next. And there are, again, pins to align everything. And here you just want to be careful that you are putting even pressure to push the pump evenly down on those pins. And so you would want to hold it in place and take your 4 Phillips head screws. And again, you don't want to drive one all the way tight to start. You want to, it's like lug nuts if you've ever changed a car tire, you want to go around to all the 4 corners and tighten them sequentially a little bit at a time. Because you want to ensure that there's even pressure on all sides. So I will just screw in and get that screw started, but I won't drive any of them tight until all 4 screws are in place. And this helps to make sure the pump is situated properly and that there will be no leaks in the system. Okay, and now I'll start tightening them just a little bit at a time. And you really want to focus on making sure that pump is seated properly, which it will not seal properly if it is not. So it should be obvious if the pump moves. You just won't be able to see good alignment of this component. And then you can go ahead and put the filter back if it's clean, or it can be replaced. And it's captured a little bit by this ring here. And then this part goes back on. And again, these 2 features ensure that you put it on the correct way. You can't do it backwards. It will only go on in the correct orientation. That sits on top, and same idea is all 4 screws. And again, you don't want to over tighten one corner like I just did. So I'm going to back that off a bit. You don't want the part to start canting on one of the sides. You want nice, even compression. Okay, and once I have these 4 screws tightened, if I'd replace the pump like I just did, I'm going to want to check to make sure I have adequate flow before putting the shells back on in case I need to do something else. And there's no harm in powering up the instrument in this state. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. There's a couple ways to check your flow. You could have a configuration already loaded on your instrument which allows you to see the flow, which is what I did. Alternatively, you could use the USB connection and connect it to a computer and go to the live view page of the software, and that would allow you to check the flow as well. So you can see, well, maybe you can't, but I just have a configuration with the 2 flow sensors displayed, and I'm in the high flow setting and I have my 150 micromoles. So I know my pump is running. I'm not clamped on anything, so I have no flow on the sample side, but I do know my pump is functioning properly. So that's the only check I would want to ensure, is that I'm getting proper flow. And then now I can turn it off. And then the final steps would be to re-screw on the shells, which will again fasten both this way, and then the screws on both sides of the shell can be reinserted, and now you've changed your pump. Thank you for watching this video. If you have more questions, there's other troubleshooting videos on our website, or feel free to contact us here at LI-COR or your local distributor.